Hello, all of you risk takers and truth seekers to podcast Life the Battlefield. Today, we're going to talk in this episode how we can recognize the Cold War. Are we truly maybe 1 minute before the World War III and nuclear holocaust? And I'd like to share something with you as well, the insights, communism versus capitalism. What is the difference? But let's go dig deep into this topic of the Cold War. Cold War lasted from the end of the World War II until the early 1990s. And it was characterized by political tension and military competition, no question asked. That era was more than just geopolitical battle between the US and the Soviet Union on one side. It was an intellectual battle, a clash between the two fundamentally opposing ideas about how society should be organized, controlled, and economically structured. For those who don't know, my name is Bekes and I'm the Guinness World Record holder. I spent almost 20 years in government service, 1800 days, consecutive days in combat. And I was born in communism. I lived in communism. I worked in communism. I was breathing communism. I was eating communism. And then one day, communism fell apart and I fought for the democracy. Now, when I speak about communism, I speak from my experience. I'm adding some of my experiences. However, my podcast, including this one, it's based on research. And I want you to understand one thing. When we talk about communism, books are not enough. If you didn't live minimum 10 to 15 years in communism in 70s and 80s, you can't talk about communism. But I knew it as a kid. There was a big fight between the West and East. Two worlds collides. On one side stood communism, a system promoted by the Soviet Union and its allies, with the goal of eradicating class divisions and encouraging community ownership. On the other hand, capitalism was embodied by the United States and the Western world. For me personally, that was a Coke, McDonald's, that was it. And that was a system that prized individual entrepreneurship and open markets. I want you to pay this attention here right now. Communism as a political economic philosophy seeks to create classless society in which everyone owns a part of the means of production. Equality and distribution of the resources based on need are essential component of communism. In a communist society, there is no private ownership of capital goods and the government is frequently in the charge of organizing and managing the economy. And I can concur this. That was let's go say 90% of this statement is very true. But of course, society cannot live only on people magazines, they call them, the warehouses or, all factories just producing, nothing comes from outside world. It does. It's a classless society. I do remember as a kid. Of course, the classes existed, but in different level. It was not like my dad was a doctor, so I'm the higher position than you, Mario. No. It was who was a party member or Politburo member, or usually communism, the factories has been led by the biggest communists. You don't need to have qualifications, but you need to be good member of the Central Committee and the party. To the Cold War, the Soviet Union was the most well-known communist state, and you can't argue about this one. That was it. And its laws and practices were frequently viewed as the pinnacle of this world view. And if anybody of you truly believed that the Russia was sitting on top of everybody, it wasn't true. They were supervising many things. But Russia was a distant country for all of us. It was something like America. I remember as a kid seeing the things in a magazine. Somebody would bring magazines from Germany, from Austria, and you see the Schwarzenegger Venice Beach, and you say oh my God, I want to go to Venice Beach. And then on the other side, the communism was portraying the superhumans. Believe it or not, superhumans. The mothers will look after, the man should be the worker, strong and healthy, all these things, give back to society. That was the communism. In contrary, capitalism was different, of course. Capitalism fundamentals, in contrast to communism, is economic system that prioritize private ownership and the free market. Individuals and business possess the means of production under capitalism, which is predicted on profit. Market competition determines prices, while supply and demand determine how resources are allocated. Governments, while occasionally interfering, normally let the market run its course. However, during the Cold War, United States was a poster child for capitalism ideas, promoting the free trade, individual businesses, and economic independence. From this point of view, I think that the US has the best marketing, or at least he does have, because capitalism is totally something different. Now, during the Cold War, there was a deep and often unbridgeable ideological divide between the communism and capitalism. Capitalists' trust in market power contrasted sharply with the communist belief in government control. To make this topic even more interesting, I want you to understand that when I was going to school, primary school or high school, we as a kids, we have the subjects. Either was called the theory and practice of Marxism or Marxism and social leadership. So you're learning about capitalism as well. You're learning about capitalism as well. But capitalism was portrayed to us as an evil way, which means like, you work until you die, basically. You have no medicals and, there's no national identity and everything else. Sounds familiar? While in communism, there was being given pride that whatever we do, whatever we work, it's for our own good. Is that correct? I don't think so. It was a slavery as well. But at least in communism, one thing we did have what Western society didn't have. Free school, free dental, free medical. Everything was free. Everything was free. That was in communism. Now, these divisions frequently presented themselves in politics as opposing views on democracy, human rights, and government. That being said, capitalist countries favored multi-party systems and democratic principles, whereas communist countries favored centralized control and one-party rule. Now, in a communist economic paradigm, the state is primarily responsible for economic planning and management. And now I'd like to throw you one question. What do you think why the Eastern Bloc collapsed? Did you put the answer down in the comment section? Yes? No? No. I tell you why it's collapsing. At the beginning of the 80s, the big inflation hit Eastern Bloc, including Yugoslavia. It was terrible. It was terrible. I remember my father purchased a new car. Well, at least this was the story. You buy the car now, but you get car in 7 to 9 years. You're paying every month. My father never saw this car because the civil war broke out in Yugoslavia. But it was interesting enough that the reason why the money was missing from the kitty in government, it wasn't that there was no money. There was a lot of money. Don't take me wrong. The government makes the money. They're selling the weeds, the flour, the sugar, all these things on the quantities you can't even imagine. But there was a guy called Ronald Reagan, great actor. He was a good guy. And Ronald Reagan was we love this guy. When he appears on TV, he wasn't sure he's in the Western movies or he's a president. But one thing he said on the TV, we doing the Star Wars program. And we were like, oh, wow! And I was just 14 years old kid who was just starting his career path in military. So I was going to military school after my primary school. Star Wars. And the Eastern Bloc was chasing Star Wars. Ronald Reagan, man, you're good. Wherever you are good. You are good, man. You sold that story to everybody. We believe because, there was a movie then, Star Wars, and just coincidentally, and then there's a couple other movies then, and we believed in that one. Now, in the communist paradigm of the economy, the state is responsible for planning and management. The government frequently sets production targets, price tactics, and distribution strategies, and the means of production, including factories, land, and resources, are collectively owned. Through the Cold War, the Soviet Union's command economy was the most visible manifestation of this tactic. And those who don't know, the Russians, they put a satellite first in orbit, not the Americans. The one thing was interesting. During 30s, before the World War started, Stalin said to the Central Bureau, he said, we are fucked. And they said, why? He said, we are 50 years behind the West. We need to make it quicker. And they didn't make it quicker. They couldn't catch up. It's not that they didn't have the experts onto this, but when you're rushing something, the quality becomes bad. So despite the facts that the purpose of centralized planning was to meet the needs of entire society, it's frequently resulted in inefficiencies and the lack of inventiveness. In contrast to communism, central planning, capitalist economy rely on the free market to determine production, distribution, and the prices. Markets are typically driven by private ownership and competition, with governments intervening only to regulate or correct market failures. During the Cold War, Western Europe and the United States bucket this paradigm, which advocated open markets, free trade, free businesses, individuals. The ideological clash between capitalism and communism had a huge impact on the world economy during Cold War. Why is that? That's a question. The superpowers sought for influence by imposing their own economic models on developing countries, highlighting these divisions. The states that comprised the non-aligned movement, which had not formally joined any bloc, have attempted to navigate this difficult climate by doing what? Employing a variety of economic tactics. So it was economic tactics that hit the struggle between the two ideologies. It was truly ideology was visible in the cultural areas of music, fashion, technology, and even gastronomy. Who has a better food? Who has a better music? Who has this? Who has that? Everything has been elevated. Pride. The employment then started to do more espionage. During the Cold War, both sides conducted extensive espionage and intelligence activities. CIA, KGB, MI6, and other intelligence services conducted covert operations, surveillances, misinformation campaigns, and the covert actions. The spy war contributed to the Cold War era's technological growth, cultural intrigue, and the mysteries, in addition to impact on diplomatic connections. Not like today. Then that was a tricky. The Cold War had an impact on operations of the UN and other international organizations, believe it or not. The UN chambers were frequently riven by ideological dispute, which had an impact on resolutions, peacekeeping efforts, and international cooperations. But do you know why? Because it's sometimes called the Security Council. Do you know who sits on Security Council? Well, certainly not me. I like to my podcast be there. I never been in your building. Do you know who? Let me share this with you. The countries, the winners of the Second World War. You can check this. So on one side you have Russia, on the other side you have England, UK, UK and the Americans and other countries. Other international organizations such as the World Bank and International Monetary Fund were also affected by Cold War dynamics, which had an impact on global development programs and economic policy. So the Cold War wasn't affecting only the production of the economy, but has an impact on every aspect of life. And that's the reason why the Cold War was actually being more divisive than anything else you can imagine. I do remember when the first time I saw Americans, and I was in the service then, and they come with their ship, we were like, wow, man, we just want to have the cheeseburger and burger and whatever it is. Of course, the people around us didn't allow us to do this, but instead of this was competition that we are stronger, better, taller than them. Even I was a short. Anyway, let me know. Communism versus capitalism. What is your understanding and why you believe that capitalism is better than communism? Or maybe you believe that communism is better than capitalism. Remember, I lived in both wars, communism and capitalism. Now, enjoy your day. Thank you very much. Feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment. And let me know in the comment section, what do you believe? It's a better capitalism or communism. Thank you.